Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I just have to say that normally when I do these sessions, there's a prize giving, but Tracy wanted to keep me to time this evening, and because we always want to sort of encourage some kind of discussion, so hopefully we can carry on later on this evening. We're doing a small event at the Hotel Locarno, so if you have any burning questions, there'll be 3 prizes and we can give them out later, if that's fair. I wanted to maybe sort of not jump too far into the future, and wanted to sort of address sort of the topic which is standing up there. As Tracy mentioned, I'm normally flying in from one place to the other. I know that many of our partners here in this room know when I've touched down in a market because I'm normally sending photos of the promotion that I thought we spent money on, and it's not there at any given airport, wherever it may be around the world. Travel retail, no surprise, is incredibly important for us as a brand. It's something that we look at constantly. It is where we see growth. But I want to talk about a little bit about what I see as a significant area of opportunity for us. It's interesting when we look at a statement like this. Humans, and not just the modern consumer, we always like to talk about the modern consumer, like to define themselves to the broader world. And here are a couple of examples of how they do it. So if we think about the gentleman here, he's in his Stussy cap. He's driving his new BMW i. We know that as humankind, whether it is our footwear, whether it is the cap on our head, how we want to define ourselves in a dress of the season or a vest, or perhaps our chosen eyewear, there is something, we can sort of talk about the digital world all we want, but there's a massive opportunity in the physical. I mean, this is the whole manifestation of brands. So, I mean, you look at the great almost inversion that's happened right now. Nike was, the it shoe 4 or 5 seasons ago, and then you look at what Adidas has done in terms of a complete transformation. Running shoes, they're classic performance trainers, and also, of course, the resurrection of some of their classic items. You look at, again, the power of a group like LVMH, and just the constant march of brands that they're able to, of course, bring out, create this level of desirability. And again, these are all things which are somehow attached and tethered to us. You look at also a recent acquisition, LVMH have also made as well, with Rimowa. It sort of seems to be sort of the new ground right now that once upon a time we might have cared about the suitcase that would sort of get sort of spit out onto the conveyor belt at the airport, or maybe not. But now it's absolutely clear that there is a huge market. There's going to be the next war at airports is going to be defining yourself by the type of luggage, and that, of course, is an opportunity that LVMH saw in snatching up the German brand, the Cologne-based Rimowa. What I think, though, and when I sort of look around the world, there's an intellectual component to all of this that somehow we're missing. So, as we say here, sadly, we're rapidly losing the ability to define ourselves intellectually. And how did we do that? We certainly don't do it this way. And I think if we look at the sort of assembled group, and this could be at any airport, any train station, the lobby of any office building around the world, it could have been the break outside even right now. If you have a device like this, there's a very good chance you're using one of 2 brands. You might be sort of a dinosaur like me and be using a BlackBerry as well. But nevertheless, it doesn't say anything about me intellectually. I can either have an iPhone or I can have a Samsung device, or maybe I've got Huawei or something else. But principally, I'm going to have one of 2 brands. Now, as we've seen, of course, so much of our media consumption is on a device like this. But what does it say about me? If we think back to where we might have been when we would have been picking up a newspaper of record or something else. So, it doesn't matter. You could be looking at your favorite cat magazine. You could be playing Sudoku on there. You can be looking at cartoons. You could be reading Der Spiegel. But nevertheless, there's nothing defining about it because the devices have been completely commoditized. And I think this is a huge area where we're missing an opportunity. So we talk about the great race for digital transformation. We all scratch our heads, how are we going to drive more revenue at travel retail, on the high streets? How are we going to get people to engage? And there's still sort of this ongoing scratching of head moment. And I think that people have forgotten the value of this. And I took a snapshot here. Some of you might recognize it. It's the Sechste Leutenplatz in Zurich. So two people reading the NZZ. And I think many of our German-speaking colleagues in the room will probably agree that the NZZ is recognized not just as a wonderful newspaper of record that, of course, is based in Zurich, but there is a certain snob value to be seen reading it. And then you speak to lots of course, Germans, and of course, the people at the Frankfurt Allgemeine, everyone else says, of course, people like to read the NZZ. They may not even read it. They want to have the right suitcase. They want to have the right eyeglasses, and they want to be seen to be reading that newspaper. So it's very clear that there is an opportunity in the market, and this is what I think so many great publishers have forgotten, the value of a masthead, the value of being seen to be reading something, and also this notion of having an intellectual brand that you use as a point of definition. I think there's also the added value of this. And we're going to go back and sort of almost work in reverse. We'll talk a little bit about our media model, how we see the world, and hopefully how we can also engage with all of our partners around the world here. Just that idea of also the power of the outside back cover. I mean, I said on one side, of course, we treat this as print advertising, but it's also the greatest out-of-home advertising as well. You walk onto a Lufthansa flight, you walk onto a British Airways flight, you get on Trenitalia, and you see people with their brand open, they're defining themselves. And then there's also that moment of also the advertising that is hopefully defining the client category that they might be living within. So, unfortunately, we're talking about the sort of premium notion and what's going on. And if I think, when we look around the world, this is what's happening right now at travel retail. It doesn't matter whether we're in Changi Airport, or we can be going through Frankfurt, or we look at the renovation that's happening at Rome. But these are sort of the stakes, working with the best designers around the world, the best people doing lighting, and thinking, how do we get people to go into these temples to buy things? How do we get them to define themselves as, of course, brand consumers? How do I move someone from being a Louis Vuitton customer and having an LV on their bag? And then and I'm saying if I'm working for the Kering Group, how do I get them to upgrade to have a woven Bottega Veneta bag? Whatever it is. But this is what is going on at top travel retail around the world. But then if we sort of think about this premium print buying customer, what's the offer for them? So they've been in all of these great environments, and they end up with this. And this is the huge disconnect that we have today, ladies and gentlemen, that there has been this enormous upgrade of all of our neighbors, all of the adjacencies that we look at in train stations. And so if we look at sort of, somewhere maybe not as upmarket as an airport, just what's happening with F&B retail, whether it is the ongoing change and of course, evolution of a brand as simple as Starbucks, all the way through to, of course, newcomers that people want to have within their estate, be you a major rail station or a suburban one as well. So you have a customer who is going to spend, 800, 1,000 euros on a suitcase, who's going to go and part with 400 euros with a great pair of glasses. And they've been in an environment which smells great, is smartly staffed, and then we come into an environment where right today, I don't even actually know, if I go to most kiosks, why am I there? Am I there to buy a neck pillow? Am I there to get a big sippy reusable cup? Am I there to get an inflatable emoji to bring back? I want to buy a book. I want to buy a magazine. I might want to buy my newspaper. But of course, as we've seen, the trade has shrunk everything down to something as wide as, well, what I'm showing you on the left is actually a very good example of trying to squeeze everything into, of course, a very confined space. And so, of course, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We're doing ourselves out of the very trade that we're here to be promoting today. And this is one of the great tragedies. So if we're going to sort of throw down a challenge, it's how do we perhaps sort of jump back a couple of slides and say, we need to be in this type of world. The major travel retail players, the major book players need to be thinking about print as a luxury. And so when we look at that definition of how do you define yourself, well, of course, you're going to have all of these wonderful trappings that fit on top of your head and on your feet and what you drive around the city in. But curiously, no one in this space is actually upgrading the experience, or actually walk out, am I proud to have that shopping bag from that travel retail player? But more to the point, do I actually understand why I'm going into that shop in the first place? So if we sort of pinball around the world and we think about Copenhagen, if we think about London Heathrow, if we think of all of the opportunities that are out there, there is definite, and this is a conversation, and we say this with a large amount of evidence, because those who will come to our cocktail this evening, we've done one very important thing. When we look at our audience, and we'll talk about them in a moment, we do about 60 to 80 events a year around the world. We are meeting our reader all the time, or our listener, or our shopper, our consumer, whoever they are. And oftentimes what we have, when we want to hear about, of course, their habits, and of course I say that they're subscribers because a lot of them, yes, they're getting it through their letterbox every month, and we're thrilled that they do it. But at the same time, we know there's just as many people who join our database because they love going to the kiosk. I mean, I shouldn't say this up here, but I hate subscribing to things. I get the New Yorker, I get the Economist, but I love going to the newsstand. And there's just as many people who like to do that. But when you speak to them today, they say, I just don't feel it's a very good experience. And in fact, I feel as the person who wants to go in and buy my 2 weeklies and the 4 monthlies that I love, I don't feel like I'm being catered to because there's just lots of Fanta and very little else within that space. We could spend a lot of time. I could take up Tracy's next few days and we could sort of dissect how did we get to this place? How did the major publishers around the world forget about the power of the masthead, forget about the power of the physical? And I think we would be able to blame, there's of course, the blame can be laid on many doorsteps. And hopefully we can sort of dissect that maybe over a couple of glasses of Prosecco this evening. But I wanted to just maybe go into a little bit how, well, not just how we've sort of found out that these things are occurring and what the desires and needs of the consumer is, but also just a little bit how we function as a brand, and hopefully how we might be able to work in a deeper way and also turn around this tide that is happening at the moment. And I do believe that there needs to be an upgrade, because otherwise it is a race to the bottom. And I would say that there aren't enough things that are happening, I think, to actually sort of really sort of turn this ship around. It's very obvious from our side, of course, yes, we should all know our audience. But as humankind, when we sort of think about what we want, we always desire a little bit better. We always want to be a little bit further up the food chain. We always want a better seat in the restaurant. We might want to sit on in a better seat on the aircraft, whatever it is. And I think as journalists as well, that means occasionally you also have to talk over your reader's head. And that's not in an arrogant way, but it's just challenging them. It's not feeding and pandering to what we think the audience wants. Why do you come to your journal every day? Why do you go to your trusted source, the news and media brands that you love? Because there's going to be something which is sitting across page or down screen or wherever it is that is going to take you somewhere else. And that is that sort of element of surprise. And again, we can go into, and that's still the great thing about print. If I sign up to a series of news feeds, well, chances are I'm just being sort of fed the same thing all the time. There's very little discovery. The great thing that a magazine or newspaper still does is you have the power of the adjacency. There's that serendipity that happens on a printed page, which simply does not happen in a digital environment yet. From our side, we think it's important to be global. And obviously, we've been talking about a series of global brands. And that's essential when you look at the Monocle model. And we want to have a conversation, and that one can be to get you picking up one of our magazines or books or newspapers on a newsstand, but it's also sending you towards one of our stores or purchasing something else within our brand. But it needs to be the exact same discussion, and that's whether it's in Stuttgart or it's in Stockholm or it's happening in Sapporo. It has to be the same level of dialogue. And so I think most of you know we only do one edition for the entire world. It is the same one no matter where you are. The advertising doesn't change, and there is no dilution. Though we are doing something quite interesting with our Dutch partners. We have a Netherlands special. We've only done this once before with Switzerland last year. So when we go to newsstand with a Dutch special next month, there will be also only the cover changes for the Netherlands. And it's a bit of a cheeky trick, but we know that it's something which can give you significant uplift. It's a trick that you can probably see 15 to 2,000 extra copies sell in a given market. Within Korea, this year we did it. We sold 27,000 copies more in Korea in a market where we're normally selling 800 copies a month. So we can't sort of pull that bunny out of the hat every month, but twice a year it's not a bad thing to do. Also in our business, we have to work with global budgets and working with global partners, and of course, no surprising, I think, obviously with the constellation of brands that we work with, you'd think every company has a global budget, but oftentimes it has to devolve also to local markets as well. But it's something that we're finding more success in. Partly, of course, brands are looking for greater efficiency, particularly at the top end of the market. We want to create lots of special projects, and I say special projects, so not just within our advertising partners, so whether they're pull-out maps that we do or serials that we do with major brands, or having great maps. But I guess the other side of the physical is, we've just seen the ongoing shrinking of magazines, again, looking for efficiencies. Let's try to put everything on one type of paper stock. It's a physical experience. So, of course, one of the challenges, we have, and oftentimes we talk to the news trade, is like, well, this Monocle's too thick when it comes to newsstand. We can only we only resupply our shop one time a day, and we can only get 3 of them on the shelves, et cetera, et cetera. These are things which really need to be addressed, because even going through Heathrow yesterday, I could see that, part of our supply was already depleted, and I think, okay, it's only 9 o'clock in the morning. How many lost sales are there going to be? So again, real world physical problems, and we can sort of address where we're going to be in 10 or 15 years with deliveries, but there's even sort of delivery real-time issues, of course, within major transport hubs. But I come back to the dynamism of having, let's say, a Zurich guide which pulls out into being a poster, for example. All of these, elements, go back to this notion of intellectual definition, that I'm, holding whatever brand, and it's not just it's ours or the NZZ, but whatever it may be, for us to sort of look at that, what is pulled out of someone's, carry-on, again, which sort of makes them, is this a slightly more, not just maybe an attractive person, but someone who's also maybe on the same intellectual wavelength with me as well. So again, big projects that we've done, again, with the likes of Lufthansa. And again, you do a project like that, it's a commercial one, but again, for our distributors who are here, we know that these are the types of things within that type of environment that you can only do in print, which also give us a sales uplift as well. That suddenly you do something like that, and we know we might want to be pushing an extra 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 copies within the German market. I think also it's, for us, it's also, making sure that we do a number of other things. So we're coming up to 12 years old. It'll be our 12th birthday in February of next year. And I guess we went from a world over here on the right. We started as a print brand. There was a small e-commerce component. We've built digital up into a significant way. And then, of course, we're very much in a retail world today. It's just sort of a bit of an orbit of all of our recent covers. And then obviously what we've done, of course, with books as well, a really sort of significant part of our business. We've just done some 500,000 Monocle travel guides. So again, I was even skeptical. I thought, are there people out there, and these are some snapshots of them, and of course I think everyone should have received a Rome guide by now as well. I was even thinking, should we only be doing digital? Should we be only creating travel apps? But again, far from it, because people want to be going around a city. It's actually still much easier to flip from page 103 to 22 to go and find that map. And again, there is something about that definition of going into a store and holding something. And if I was holding just my device, well, it may not be sort of the same level of engagement. Again, what we hear time and time again, it's a marker of having something physical that people can see, oh, you're a Monocle reader, can I get you a cup of coffee? You know, we're not demanding a discount, of course not, but suddenly someone said, oh, we've had so many people come in, you know, I'll give you 10 or 15% off. And that is something which the physical, particularly within the premium environment, is still able to deliver. Of course, we do a variety of, not just a variety, there's also a galaxy of a number of course, digital things that we do. The Monocle Minute, so it's a morning newsletter that's really a lateral view of what we think are the interesting stories around the world. And then also running a 24-hour radio station as well. So Monocle 24, broadcasting out of London and now Zurich, Tokyo, Toronto, soon Los Angeles, has really again been our sort of big digital bet. And at the same time, we're also trying to think about the physical nature. How can I sort of look across an airport lounge or across a railway carriage and know if someone's also a Monocle 24 consumer? So sort of in thinking about that, it's this notion of the club. And you'll see here, we did something very, very simple for our subscribers early on. We said, you know, if you're paying the 150 euros, pounds a year to become a subscriber to the brand, then maybe if we send you a tote bag, this sort of makes you a member of the club. And there's no way of purchasing that bag unless you become a subscriber. Now, we've started to build that out in another way. What do we do at retail? What do we do with our retail partners as well? So instead of just getting a plastic bag, we've done a number of initiatives with, I would say, with several of our international partners here as well, that also, as someone who's regular, who's coming in, and someone who loves print, if you're spending sort of more than 25, 50 Sing dollars on your magazines, then you get a marker to become part of our club with one of our totes. I think at the same time, we've also then, as I said, just looked at quite a big retail program, and that sort of extends around the world. 6 stores, soon 7, soon 8, and we will very shortly announce our first travel retail venture as well. So at a very large airport in Asia, doing something which is a little bit as that sort of slide that sort of slipped past very quickly, to have a place where people are able to engage and really mingle. And this is the thing that we've really found a decade on. You realize in this physical world, if I've got all of these markers, oh, you're a Monocle reader as well, that people do want to congregate, they do want to meet. And this is just a little snapshot from Maison et Objet. It's one of the major, of course, trade fairs in the design space. Happens twice a year in Paris, and every year our stand grows. Partly because of our cafe business, partly because of wholesale, but it just shows that it's also there's plenty of other F&B offers there. But this is something where, and I don't want to use the word club, but it is. I mean, if you are a reader of our brand, and again, how do I know? It's because I saw that you have a tote bag, or you're of course carrying one of the magazines. Then I want to be around you. I'm just going to leave you before we go with a new project that is underway in London, and this is Kiosk Cafe. So this is doing exactly as the name says. It is a kiosk, and it's delivering great coffee, and it's open from 7 to 7. Also has a license, and it is a franchise that we're looking to build, and to, on one side, bring back a sense of community, but also create a very sort of focused, strong environment, and a beautiful one where people are going to linger, spend, and of course indulge in all of the titles that they like. And this is the newest addition to the family. On the left, again, a kiosk that we're running in Zurich. We found in the center of Seefeld, there you had to walk quite far to go and buy a newspaper in the morning, or to actually sort of be able to pick up your favorite either German language, Swiss, or international press, and also get a good coffee as well. And this is something which has been generating sort of considerable interest across the markets. And finally, just really the business of doing conferences, bringing people together, having an informed discussion. And I think there's a lot of currency in terms of how we're going to be able to build that out. And just to sort of what we're up to next, if anyone gets a big bonus this year, and hopefully that's a few people in the room, we've just announced that we're doing our first residential project. So in Bangkok, from probably end of 2020, you will have the most beautiful kiosk at street level, and then probably 70 to 100 very hungry readers living upstairs as well. And I'm going to leave it there and turn it back to Tracy. Thank you very much.